Happy Monday, everybody. I am AnnaLee Dragon, director of the Kinderhook Memorial Library, and as you're probably all tired of me telling you, we're back for another Monday Book Talk. I am trying to do something a little different this week, so we are going to do audiobooks. I did one talk about audiobooks many moons ago in the last year, where we just kind of discussed the fact that audiobooks are sometimes viewed as not as valuable or the same experience as reading a book, and they're not the same experience. However, they have equal value. I told you at that time that there have been tests done now where your brain function is the same when you're listening to a book as when you're reading it with your own two eyes. And so there is just as much value to be had from audiobooks. I think they're wonderful. And today, because it's like summer vacation time, and it's summer vacation time in the year of pandemics, which means we're probably not all flying places like we normally would. We are more driving or taking a train or other modes of transportation. So we're going to talk audiobooks for road trips, because I thought that kept it a little more current, and we will talk about some different audiobooks this time than last time. So I'm going to put up a cover of an audiobook, and then I will come back and talk about it. And I think I have 5 titles for you. They're all available in the Mid-Hudson Library System. Some of them can be downloaded through Hoopla or Overdrive if you want a downloadable experience, which is the one I prefer. But we also have them on CDs through many of the libraries in the system, including our own. So you can borrow them once you find one you like, and hopefully it suits your needs for your next summer road trip. So let's get started. The first audiobook we're going to talk about today is not new. Several of these are not, but this one is road tested by me. My family and I took a long road trip, talk about many moons ago, when I was a young person, which feels like a million years ago, to Louisiana from New York. So it was several days in the car, and I needed an audiobook that was something that spoke to me as a person in my 20s, my brother who's slightly younger, my parents who are older than me, obviously, and trying to find something that is a good balance and is interesting for everybody, is family friendly, depending. We didn't so much need that aspect, but if you have young kids, there are certain books that you're not going to listen to with young children in the car. So I'm trying to strike a balance here. So this book, In a Sunburned Country by Bill Bryson, is something that little kids probably wouldn't find as interesting, but as 20-somethings, my brother and I found it really interesting, and my parents also did as well. So it's nonfiction, obviously. Bill Bryson writes travel books, which is great too, because you're going on a road trip, right? So having a travel book be the book of choice is wonderful. It was pretty long, which was excellent. Sometimes picking the right audiobook for a car trip means finding one that matches the right time frame. This was a long one, which was great. It's about Australia, the continent where, as he puts it, everything is trying to kill you. So it's full of lots of scary animals and things that don't exist in other parts of the world, because the whole country is a continent, is an island, right? So it has a unique take on a lot of things, including nature. And it is funny, and you learn a lot, and there's a lot to discuss, which I think is what makes it a good audiobook if you're not in the car alone. If you're on a car trip with some other people, it can be, even when you're not listening to it, you can pause it and you can have a discussion about some of the stuff you learned. Makes great dinner conversation when you get to wherever you're going, if you have hosts or hostesses that you can make dinner convo with. So In a Sunburned Country by Bill Bryson is hilarious. You learn a lot. It's about travel, another part of the world. So all high subjects on my list for things I'm looking for, boxes I'm trying to check when I pick an audiobook for a road trip. So if you've already read In a Sunburned Country, though, Bill Bryson obviously has a number of them. A Walk in the Woods being his most famous, about the Appalachian Trail. But there's ones about England. There's ones about other parts of Europe. There's ones about America. So like, he has a large array of books to choose from also. And he narrates a lot of them himself, which in his case, I find to be a lovely thing. He is nice to listen to. He is funny and charming, and him narrating his own books is a major plus. So if you have read In a Sunburned Country, possibly check out one of his other books for your next road trip. Okay, next book. Another route to take when choosing an audiobook for a car trip is to maybe kill two birds with one stone. So if you are driving teenagers or high schoolers around and they have summer reading lists, sometimes they're classic literature, which means it's something that you might enjoy and want to re-listen to or reread or read for the first time. And I think that's what kind of brought me to this one, To Kill a Mockingbird. So obviously Harper Lee wrote this book many, many years ago. This edition of it particularly is the one read by Sissy Spacek, and it's fantastic. So I hadn't read the book in many years. I read it as a high schooler and again as an English literature major, but I hadn't read it in many years, and it was delightful. There's a lot in there that is still current. Obviously, there's some stuff that is not, but there is a lot in there that is still current, and I enjoyed the reading of it. Having an actor read can be really great too, because they are so good at tone, inflection, character, all of those things that maybe an author who wrote the book might not always be the best choice to read it. And so I thought Sissy Spacek did a fabulous job. But it's also one of those ones that brings up a lot of important topics. So talking about race, talking about social justice, talking about all of these things that are in our current kind of vernacular right now that we're discussing and are on everybody's lips are also part of this book. So choosing a classic in that way can be really great too. It's also just something that I think engages people of all different ages, which is why, and fairly family friendly. I mean, obviously this one has some hard parts in it, as many of them do, but if you have high schoolers or whatever, I think it's an excellent choice. So if you haven't read To Kill a Mockingbird ever or in a while, I might suggest revisiting it, and this particular edition with Sissy Spacek narrating was wonderful. Okay, next book. So changing tone here, as you drive around in your car on a trip, you often are watching out the windows, right? And seeing the nature surround you. That's a big part of the enjoyment of a long car ride many times. Obviously not when you're just driving through a major city or sitting in gridlock. But there are, if you drive cross country, if you drive to other parts of the country, you will go through a lot of beautiful natural sights. And so this book, I think I chose because it felt to me like something that speaks to that part of enjoying travel. Where the Crawdads Sing by Delia Owens. Cassandra Campbell is the narrator of this one. She did a fantastic job. So for any of you who have not yet read this book, and I know there probably aren't many because it was so popular for so long, but it is a book that takes place in the North Carolina Low Country, the marshlands, and it is very nature-centric. It is not like a fast-paced kind of book. It is a leisurely read. I would also say I like that better in audiobooks when I'm on a car trip. I don't want usually too much of a thriller or anything that I have to pay too close attention to, or can be scary or moves real fast, because you're trying to obviously take in the things that are around you while you're driving for safety's sake as well as for enjoyment. So something that is nice background kind of and a little less obtrusive can be like nice. And while Where the Crawdads Sing does have kind of a mystery plot interwoven in it, it's very character driven. It's very about the place. I would argue the setting is a character of its own. And so it is just a lovely, languid pace and about a really beautiful part of the world. So maybe if you're driving to that part of the world, it would be really interesting. But even if you're not, and you just want to have something pleasant to listen to and hear lots of description about nature and those things, I think this would make an excellent car trip book. So it came out in 2018. They say it's got an edge of the seat story. I don't know that I agree with that. I think it's character driven. I think it has a great story and you do want to know. I don't consider it a thriller so much. There is a mystery involved, but I wouldn't consider it a thriller. But it has a lovely depiction of North Carolina and the nature. And so again, fairly family friendly. I think there are maybe some parts that not so much, but a lot of it is stuff that your kids could listen to too if they were in the car. So we've got two more books for you. The Flight Attendant by Chris Bogelan, it's got three different narrators, Aaron Spencer, Grace Experience, and Mark Deakins. I like that too. So this is a different type of book in that it has a cast. So some books, when there are multiple characters, have multiple actors reading the different parts, which can be really great or not so much depending. I have not listened to this audiobook, but The Flight Attendant, for many of you, as we talked last week about shows that were streaming and kind of books that you might like, this is a show streaming on HBO currently. It has a bunch of big name people in it, really good mystery, dark, not for little kids. It's about a flight attendant who ends up in a situation. There's a murder. She doesn't know what happened. There's memory loss. She's trying to piece things together. Very dangerous people she's involved with. by accident, I guess you could say. So it involves world travel, jet-setting lifestyles, but some dark things, murder, and there's some like mafia stuff, and it's really good show. However, what I have heard is that the series diverges pretty decently from the books. So even if you've watched the show, you might want to now check out the book. I don't know what that word was, want to. You might want to check out the book now that you've watched the show so that you can compare and contrast the differences, which is also something that's fun to do when they make a different version of something that you've enjoyed. So if you've read the book, watch the show. If you've watched the show, maybe listen to the audiobook. And it is suspenseful, and but it does. So I guess one of the major differences I was reading is that the main setting in the book is in Dubai, where in the TV show it was set in Bangkok. So there are differences even in the background, the place, the cities where it is. So you might learn something from that. And then there are some other, lots of talk of flight travel. They talk about a lot of major cities in the world. So if you're into that kind of thing, The Flight Attendant by Chris Beaujolais could be a great read for your next trip. Okay, I have one more for you, and it's nonfiction. We're going to end on a nonfiction note. As you saw there, my final choice for audiobooks for a road trip is Outliers, The Story of Success by Malcolm Gladwell, who both wrote the book and narrates it. He narrates most of his, and they're great. When I spoke about reading a book that gives you something to talk about, I don't think anybody can compare to Malcolm Gladwell. I learned so much reading his books, and it's great. It's these little digestible facts. He takes things that maybe seem like they wouldn't be the most interesting. They could be slightly esoteric or maybe even, I don't know, boring sounding, but when he writes about them, they're fascinating. And it makes such great dinner conversation. So whether it's for the road trip itself or for the destination when you've arrived, I think there's so much to learn from. So I chose Outliers because I have talked about a few of his books, including David and Goliath, which was one of the newer ones, and How We Talk to Strangers or Talking to Strangers. They're excellent. But if you have read those, go back to some of his others. Outliers, Tipping Point. I find they all have that same sense of you learn a lot. Of things that you just didn't know that seem like they should be common knowledge but aren't. And it's the way that he frames them, in my opinion, the way that he tells the story is what makes it so fascinating. So this book is about the world of outliers, the best and brightest, most famous, most successful, and he asks the questions about what makes high achievers different from every other person on the planet. And his answer is that we pay too much attention to what successful people are like and too little attention to where they are from. So either their culture, their family, their generation, an idiosyncratic experience they had, and it's just fascinating. So it makes for a great, interesting read. It will keep you paying attention. If you have a boring drive on a long highway or something with not much to look at or talk about, I think a Malcolm Gladwell book would be just the right fit because it's got so much to talk about, and you can pause it and go over stuff and talk about it at the end. And if somebody falls asleep when they wake up, you have plenty to chat with them about. So Outliers by Malcolm Gladwell. So that's all of the audiobooks I have chosen for road trips this week, but I have more. So if you have read all of these, let me know. I can help you pick something out great that would be wonderful for the next trip. And hopefully you're all enjoying your summer and getting to take some small trips, even if they're in the car. And if there is anything we can do for you or any help you need finding your next read or signing up for summer reading or any of the above, please let us know and we'll be more than happy to help. And I look forward to seeing you all soon, and be well, and I will see you next week.